Okay, so first things first, I managed to figure out how to get the microphone a little bit louder and clearer. Turns out there was a little thing called decibel boost, which showed up on the control panel options. Who knew? So yeah, having played around with that, I managed to get the volume levels a little bit higher, a little bit more audible as well. So that's pretty handy. Obviously the downside to that is it now picks up literally every sound I make, so obviously sitting on a squeaky chair, is the chair squeaking? It isn't me. I'm not attached entirely with metal and wood and anything that would obviously squeak. I don't squeak when I walk, not that I'm aware of. Nobody's mentioned it. I think if you did squeak when you walked, obviously I'm not, sort of differential to that. If you squeak when you walk, that's fine. My knees click a bit first thing in the morning, but I think that's just due to stiffness in bed. So anyway, I'm rambling. I've gone off on a tangent again. Terrible start to a video. I will be covering several points that I mentioned in my previous video, where I was going to talk in length about certain subjects and didn't get around to doing it, mostly because I ran out of time. YouTube has a limit to the amount of video time you can put on there unless you pay for your account or subscribe it with adverts and things. I'm not going to do that because I don't see why anybody should make money from my videos, because they're mostly just rambly anyway. So anyway, long story short, too late. I'm going to be referencing this book, which sort of covers pretty much everything you'll ever need to know. It's by this man here, which, as anybody in the field will know. What's that? That's another book in a shot. We don't want to care about that one, we want this one. So I'm going to reference a couple of points from here, and then talk briefly about them. And I'm going to do that in the best possible ring fashion, because obviously YouTube's video uploader, for some bizarre reason, is uploading at a couple of frames a second, which means that if I do this, then I go blurry for a couple of seconds and look like the girl from The Ring. So I'm going to try and avoid moving too much if at all possible, which is going to be a bit strange and a little bit unusual. But anyway, I'm going to cover the first tab, because I have marked sections of the book. They're all going to fall out now the minute I open it, and I'm going to be left flustering around like I've dropped all my notes. I'm going to briefly cover theory of mind, which is a thing that basically affects a lot of people on the autism spectrum scale. Aspergers people not specifically so much, although it is mentioned and covered. Basically, theory of mind, and I will read a small section from the book. It simply says, although we can appreciate that the person with Asperger's syndrome has difficulty knowing what another person may be thinking or feeling, it is much harder to imagine what it must be like on a day-to-day basis, as typical people mind-read relatively easily and intuitively. We can read a face and translate the meaning of body language and the prosody of speech. We also recognise the contextual cues that indicate the prevailing or unexpected thoughts of others. Now basically what this means is, and obviously I've had to read it because I do not have the ability to do this, so obviously I don't really know what it means. Basically the gist of it is, from what I can gather, is that if you're talking to somebody and you look at them in the face, you should be able to tell how interested they are in what you're talking about. But you should also be able to tell as well whether they're imminently about to ask a question or whether they're feeling an emotion or anything, depending on what you're saying to them. In some extreme cases, you should be able to tell whether people want to leave the conversation and go somewhere else. You should be able to tell this from body language and the expressions on their face and things like this. I can't do that quite so well, mostly because I don't always look at people when I talk to them. From my point of view, and I will cover this briefly as well on the other chapters, is that when I'm talking to somebody, because I know where they are, I don't always look at them. People are not just what you see. There's a whole wealth of knowledge and information and thoughts and memories and feelings associated with particular people. So the more I get to know somebody, the less likely I am to look at them when I talk to them, which is really sad, because people they always assume that I'm really interested in them when I first get to know them, and less so over the years, which is not true at all. It's because as I get to know them more and more, I don't need to look at them quite so often, because I remember more and more about them emotionally, and you remember things they've done, the concept of it, memories and things that experiences. So you tend to draw on those when you think of that person. It means you become a more of a loyal friend, because of the fact that I don't tend to remember recent problems they've had. I always remember all the things they've done for me in the past, and when they've been particularly sort of helpful. I'm not going to use the word useful, because that sounds like you accumulate, oh, this person was very useful to me early on, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that I have a small collection of friends who I would consider very close friends, and I've known them for quite a few years. So, and you tend to, things that they helped you out with, or just for there for you at different points of your life, and just to sort of repay them back at some point would be good, and you always sit there thinking, I'll never be able to repay them back. So anyway, so that's theory of mind anyway. It briefly covers, you know, that this theory that you should be able to look at people and tell what they're thinking. Not always the case with me. As I've got older, from when I was little, never could tell. As an adult, I'm an adult. You think that you can do better. You can read people's emotions and expressions. It's not always the case. You can't always immediately tell whether somebody is particularly happy about news you've just given them or not. It's not easy to tell whether your actions and the things you've said have upset somebody or annoyed somebody unless they physically show it. And sometimes I can tell somebody something and they seem okay. They might go quiet, which lately I've taken to read as a sign that a problem has arisen, but they can occasionally go quiet and then they disappear, and then like a couple of days later you get a text or something, or you get an email, or you know, when you see them again they're quite cold, and they tell you it's because they've been annoyed at something you've said. Now obviously, because it wasn't addressed at the time, I don't know, so I presume that they are okay when they have left, because obviously that's kind of something of a shock to me as well. People actually take offence at things you've said and then take several days to get over it, and then will come back to you and attempt to resolve the situation, or in some cases let it hang. And that can be really strange for me, especially because of my memory problems as well. So I tend to say something to somebody, expect them to be upset, they're not, I assume it's okay, and then several days later it comes around and bites you in the arse. Whereas if they'd said at the time, do you know what, that was really offensive, I could apologise for it at the time, or try and explain that it wasn't the way I meant it, and then obviously the situation can be resolved quickly, and then I can move on and we can go from there. But people are not like that. They're not like that at all. Which is a bit of a shame. But that's just the way the world is. I tend to be very instinctive and live for the moment because I can't plan too far ahead in terms of people and relationships. I try and keep everyone an even keel. What this means is, the problem with this is that I expect people to state a problem now, deal with it, get over it, or work around it now, so that it doesn't keep occurring weeks from now. This is not always a realistic expectation. You will always hit problems in the future because of this. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Some people I can get on with really, really well, and they just kind of accept me for how I am, and other people can't. They do have problems with it, and you do end up with these situations where you don't talk to them for days, and I will sit there with this nagging feeling, thinking, oh, you know, have I pissed them off permanently, you know. And you do, I mean, it kills me more than it kills them. They're just annoyed because I've been careless, or I've said some comment and they've been like, oh, how can you be so heartless? From my point of view, I'm just sitting there racked with guilt for days, and I can't concentrate on anything. The things that bring me enjoyment, they don't bring me enjoyment. I lose sleep. I can't eat properly. I just sit there for days just worrying and worrying and worrying. And then when I do see him again, they bring it up, I mention it, I explain it all away, and the whole thing's gone just like that. And it was no big deal at all. And whether they realise that I've been worrying about it for days or not, I don't know, but I never bring it up, I never mention it, because of the fact that why would you want people to think that you've been worrying about these things for days? There's no point. So, you know, so that briefly explains theory of mind. I've been rambling for about 8 minutes, so what I'm going to do is cut this short and transfer to several other videos, especially if I'm going to ramble like this. So, yeah, next video.